I called up a friend one day in the era when everyone used landlines and didn't need an area code just to phone a neighbor. He had rented a game from the grocery store because we rented from grocery stores back then too. "What game did you get?" I asked. "Metroid," he responded. "What is it like? What is it about? What do you do?" I queried. "Well," he said, "right now I'm fighting Cheerios." Fighting Cheerios. I don't know what my mind imagined back then, having only experienced games through the mid 1980s, but I knew Metroid would have me fighting Cheerios. I waited for him to return it and then rented it myself. I would own it a short time later. It is difficult to present Metroid without mentioning Super Metroid. Not because I feel that I need to make apologies for Metroid, quite the contrary, but rather because I feel that most people see Super Metroid as a wonderful evolution of Metroid, enough so that the original should be left in the dust. We'll get to Super Metroid at some point in the future, but for now, let's focus on Metroid. And while nostalgia drives my love for the original, I genuinely feel the game is underrated. Begin Super Mario Bros. As a one-player game. It is you versus Koopa's minions. You have to collect coins and power-ups while making your way through numerous levels. The land is perilous, and there are no allies, only enemies. The same is true for many games. But Metroid, at least for me, is different. It manages to convince me that I am alone, that Samus doesn't belong here. It may seem odd in the modern era of gaming to think of an 8-bit game like Metroid as something with this level of immersion and mystique, yet this was a game that was best played after sundown, with the lights turned off. I should add that I didn't experience Metroid as an extremely clear capture, such as what you have seen so far. I experienced it like this, in the warm glow of a CRT display, a smaller display like the Commodore monitor you see now, but even older, on a color television from 1968 using RF input. There is nothing to prevent you from acquiring an old TV set, hooking up a NES to it, popping in Metroid, and attempting to recreate the game how I first experienced it, being transported to another world while your family is asleep. But it wouldn't be the same in the modern era, would it? Our eyes have been open to 30 more years of games and technology. I know that my own nostalgia is fused to my personal opinion of Metroid, so much so that I cannot be objective. But then, that is the nature of Facets of the Gym. We, that is to say you and I, may both enjoy Metroid, but that doesn't mean we're on board the same train. And that's not it. No. 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 That's it. This game is like, well, it isn't like the other ones. There is an entire genre of games that appear to owe a salute to Metroid and a few of its contemporaries for pioneering a side-scrolling sandbox platformer where the player pursues upgrades in order to progress, and backtracking is commonplace. Can you imagine a time before we had so many genres and subclassifications? A time when a game was just a game? The irony is that Metroid is part of the Adventure series. It literally has a genre printed on the front of its box. Yet, it stands apart from other games. As Nintendo's boom began in the late 1980s, there were several games that appeared to give birth to a franchise. It seemed inevitable that Super Mario Bros. Would get a sequel. It did. It actually got two. And the second had a different game mechanic. The same thing happened with The Legend of Zelda. It went from being a game to a series. It seemed like other games might follow the same path, however, their futures were ultimately quite different. And when you examined your NES library, there were these games and those games, and then there was Metroid. It was different. And when you went to your friend's house and the two of you looked at his games and decided what to play, did you select Metroid? You probably played Contra or Double Dragon 2, but Metroid? That was most likely the game you asked to borrow and set aside from the others. It was different. Metroid was like Metroid. Unless you have access to a map and a strategy guide, or a magazine such as Nintendo Power, you're on your own when it comes to navigation. There is no in-game map, no menu to show you your position. Metroid relies on your map-making skills, or your memory and instincts alone, in order to successfully traverse its world. Later games in the series would add a built-in auto map as well as the possibility of finding a map room to tell you where you haven't been yet. It is certainly a much easier way to get your bearings and focus on your next objective. And for many, or perhaps even most people, a built-in map is a game changer, possibly even the difference between the desire to play a game or not. And then there is me, the guy that saw a built-in map at the start of Super Metroid and was, I kid you not, disappointed. Getting lost and trying to remember how I got to where I am now, deciding whether or not to backtrack, entering a new area with new music I'd never heard before, my eyes were fixed on the playfield alone, not on taking a few steps and then consulting a map screen in some strange ping-pong game of sensory input. It was raw. What is down there? What is behind this door? Why did the music just change? I've been here before. Did I go left or right last time? Frustrating for most, but all part of the journey for me. Where does Metroid fall? Is it a classic like The Legend of Zelda or Super Mario Bros.? Is it a game you simply tip your cap and give thanks to, considering what the future brought in the years that followed? Was it a product of the times that doesn't hold up well today? Or is it more like a game that one group loves while many more don't really understand its appeal? We've scratched the surface of my take. Where do you stand? Do you appreciate it for what it is, or does it take some modernization in order to make it an enjoyable experience? Maybe it does. Or maybe it is a matter of taking a different approach. Maybe it is dangerous to go alone, to be alone, to feel alone. Maybe Metroid is best experienced as a two-player game. Thanks for watching.